Congratulations, you found this episode. You did it. Algorithms, am I right? Okay. And I don't need to do a countdown. I don't know what Ben does. He waits for a minute. I guess I'll do what he does. Hello and welcome to Azeroth Roundtable, episode 358. I think I got that right. I'm your host, John Jagger. Joining me this week, we have 3 guests and 2 of them are here, which is a good sign that I'm doing a real good job while Ben's away, in that I managed to get 2 of the 3 guests that we had on the show. So this week, like I said, Ben's on vacation. He's out of here. I'm your host for tonight. And joining me so far tonight, I have Jason and Spencer. Both of you, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. You might find, good listeners, that as this show goes on, Manny might join us as well. We hope. We'll see. He'll pop in like a special guest. It'll be like a variety show.
Yeah, like
It's
a late night.
Yeah, like a late night. Yeah,
Yeah.
Where like they bring on the big star first, and then that star just moves down the couch, and the next star comes on, and they move down the couch together, and next star comes on.
Honestly, I like this.
We gotta get a musical actor as stand-up for the last.
We do.
Last segment.
Oh my god.
Someone at least who can like play like drum rolls and whatnot on the side when jokes happen and whatnot.
I like this idea so much. This format doesn't exist in WoW. We're due for
it is kind of a.
We need a late night
niche,
show
yeah.
for World of Warcraft. I agree. I think that would be really fun.
I'd be lying if I said I'd never considered it before.
This is great. I like this. I mean, we're ready for a format change. This show, stale as bread. Like stale bread, though. It's time. It's time to change it up. I think we go full late night show. It'll be perfect for the Shadowlands. I don't know why. Actually, I don't know why. It had made sense in my head as I was saying it, and then I thought about it, and I was like, why am I equating Shadowlands the late night?
Like thematically, yeah, there's not a lot. Well, I mean, because there's a lot of shadows at night, right? So if you have like a late night TV show format, that could sort of be related, I guess.
Are there less shadows at night because it's dark, so there's no light source?
Well, I mean, no, because there's the moon, and the moon is all lit up from the sun, and that could be casting shadows, and you probably have some, street lights or something. So
yeah. I'm with both of you on this.
Okay.
Moon does cause shadows. Agree.
But sun causes a lot of shadows too, so it's that like debate.
Yeah. It's also in movies how you can technically tell when they film something during the day and then just applied a big blue filter over everything because you're like, boy, there sure are a lot of intense shadows tonight. Look at that. She's walking up to the house and I can see a perfect outline of her body as she does it. Like, I don't think this was filmed in the evening. Anyway, World of Warcraft, everybody.
World of Warcraft.
This is not a show about the cycles of the moon or evenings and what you might find in them. At least not yet. We're here to talk about WoW. And, we've had some time with the new patch. We've had the honeymoon phase is over. The raids have begun. The race to World First has concluded. We've really just now settled into that comfortable part of the patch. And what better guests to have to rein me in on my tirades and bad thoughts than you two, especially because you take on so much of the patch. Like, that's the one thing I want to say about both of you. It's also true of Manny. Sometimes I do feel like, even with Ben here who does raid, sometimes it can be difficult to feel like we're giving a fair and accurate presentation of a patch when we, maybe carve off a little bit. And granted, that might serve a bit of the audience, but you guys are in deep. So the very first question I want to ask is, how's raiding been treating you? Because you've been in deep in that.
Yeah, so raiding for me is mythic progression. We're 5 bosses in right now, so we're working on the 6th, which is the soccer boss. So we got Shadhar, which was the doggo boss, that is basically just a big big puppy that you beat on. It's kind of a dark thing that they did in World of Warcraft. I don't know why
It's
they
really
did that.
sad.
But
He's a good
yeah,
boy. It's not
he's a
his
good
fault,
boy. I
but
know
you know,
there are no bad dogs. You know,
you
it's
got
so
to do what you
it's
got to
sad.
do. It's not. Yeah, he didn't mean it,
Yeah,
but
it's
he's just
true.
being trained. You know, yeah, there are no bad
It's
dogs. There's
N'Zoth.
just bad
N'Zoth
dog
is
owners,
just
right?
yeah.
N'Zoth is not a
N'Zoth's a
good
bad
dog
dog
owner.
owner. Yeah, I agree. Anyways, so yeah, so we took down Shadhar, and so now we're on to Inquisitor Xanath, who's the soccer boss, where you actually have to kick a ball in a pattern and get it from one portal into another portal. Is the goal of that boss, and so we're right now practicing getting people's shots lined up properly to score that goal to be able to kill the boss
goal
regularly.
of that boss.
Exactly. Yes. To get points. Yeah. So far, raid's been going well. First week cleared heroic, cleared normal. Second week, obviously Mythic opened, got into Mythic. I think the raid itself, for the bosses I've experienced, has been pretty good. Vexiona, who's the purple dragon boss, is probably the only one so far we've had trouble with, where we actually had like server problems. Like we actually were losing frame. There was like delay on the server, like the server had lag. So that was probably our biggest thing that we noticed as far as that goes. But when it comes to the encounters, we've enjoyed the encounters a lot, which has been good. Especially Rathian has been a lot of fun as a first boss, where you just like, John, there's no trash. Literally, you enter the raid and there's the first boss.
Well, hey, Rathion's the one I fought. Now, granted, it was just in Raid Finder, but
Sure.
Rathion's the one I fought, and I went in, and I was like, this looks amazing, this sounds amazing, what an epic stage to set it on, what a cool area that you fight him, and I thought it was a real nifty fight. I had a lot of fun with it. The lack of trash was great, and then he didn't drop the weapon I was hoping he was gonna, because that's all WoW is for me right now. It's a constant, never-ending quest for weapons. I did a daily quest to get a dagger yesterday just to feel like I got a weapon. Didn't need it, didn't want it, I was just like, man, I just want to know what it's like to get a weapon out of this game again. And so I got a dagger.
I have a trick for you, John, for getting a weapon that's a guaranteed weapon that you can get.
Oh, you're gonna like this. You're gonna like this
only
trick
requires doing road quests. All it requires is doing road quests. All right. You turn on war mode. This is the scary part. Okay. You turn on war mode. But when an assault comes up in either, called like either of the original zones, not the like the new stuff. It's nothing new. This is old.
Okay.
You go and you do this assault with war mode on. And you'll get about 55 to 65 conquest points, which is PvP points, for completing the world quests inside that area that are during the assault. And there's also a chest there that if you find the chest, which sometimes spawns, and you open it, you get an additional 50. So that gives you just over 100 conquest points, all right? If you get 500 conquest points, you get a 445 weapon.
Okay. You had me at here's a way to get a weapon.
Yeah. So
you can pick the weapon that you want too. So
find an assault, do the world quest in the assault, get 40-45 weapon.
All right, I can do this.
That's what you got to do.
I can live with war mode on again. I mean, that's how I basically played the game for the first couple months of this expansion. So
yeah.
I can go
you're a way to get
back.
started.
So like,
just grab a weapon of your choice.
Yeah.
If you ever get in trouble, you just vanish. You Cloak of Shadows vanish and run away, and you're fine.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, fighting enemies is not a problem. Sometimes I can't kill them. Sometimes there's a paladin, and I'm just like, ugh. And we just get bored of each other, and we're like, can we just go our separate ways? And he's like, yeah. It's not good. Like, I'm not.
You ever been in that PvP scenario and tested the waters where you're like, you back up and see if they chase you or not, and you back up a bit more?
Yeah. You're just stepping back. You're just like, well, what are we gonna do here? Because
it's like
I can't kill you. You can't kill me. Like, we both recognize that we're bored. We're angry, but we're bored. So what if we just walk the other way?
I've become more merciless lately, to be honest, with PvP. I've been ganked enough in the new zones in Vale of Eternal Blossoms, which is where we're back doing daily quests, and then also in Uldum, doing those quests with War Mode on. I've been attacked enough by enough Horde that I am now the person who is attacking Horde. I am coming out of the sky and killing Horde who are killing rares so I can steal the rare for them. I'm now that guy.
Yeah.
Because they drove me to it, okay? I was the nice guy. I used to be the nice guy who'd drop in and help them kill the rare so that I could get the rare next time it spawned or whatever it was. Not anymore. Nope, not anymore.
Buy the ticket, take the ride. They click the button. You are within your
now.
rights to kill them and take their spoils of battle.
As somebody who has been mercilessly ran over time and time again, I fully recognize that as soon as I hit yes war mode, that did not grant me just, oh, come on, we're all in an agreement that you get to just have, you get more reward and you just have a different experience. It's fine. No, there's no mercy. I didn't get, what's the title you get for being an assassin and then killing a certain amount of people in a row without dying?
It's like Horde Slayer, or is it Alliance Slayer, or
I think
Slayer
it's
of the Alliance?
Slayer
I'm not
of the
sure,
Alliance. I didn't get Slayer of the Alliance by being respectful of weaker enemies. I got that by being just like, oh, you're trying to get your quest thing done? Oh, you just want to kill this guy right here? Too bad. You're done. You're gonna die.
I mean, that tension is what makes the whole system fun, because everybody's kind of in that mode. Although, one thing that's funny since the patch that I've noticed is like the older zones, like the 8.0 and 8.2 zones, are a little bit more chill when it comes to world PvP generally. Like the weirdos that are still there doing stuff for like AP and rep, we all kind of just want to be left alone to finish up what we're doing before we go do anything else. So
Yeah.
most of the real spicy world PvP has migrated to the 8.3 zones.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a perfect time for me to go do those assaults and get myself
Yeah.
a weapon. That's what it sounds like.
If you get one of the crates that drop from the planes that fly over the whole PUBG thing where the plane flies over and drops a crate, if you get one of those, that's like 50 conquest as well. There's a bunch of ways that don't involve necessarily having to fight the enemy faction in order to get conquest. You don't have to queue up for stuff. And yeah, so that first conquest reward is 455 weapon, and then it actually progresses to a different item, and every week if you choose to do it, you can get another 445 piece of gear. So it's a really easy way to gear up just through doing world quests, which is a great way to do it. That and checking your emissary, because there was a weapon emissary up like 2 days ago or something.
Yeah, I got one not too long ago, which is that's what really inspired this lust, because I had just relegated myself to, all right, 415. And like that's just what I'm gonna be forever. And then there was an emissary quest, and I was like, oh, I gotta do this. And I ran some old dungeon and got it and felt good about it. And then I was like, well, now I've got one, and now I need the other, because that's the goal of any good rogue.
That's how they work.
The neatest thing about the conquest stuff is actually give you a list of stuff to choose from. So you're like, oh, well, I can choose from one of 6 weapons. Excellent, I'll take this one.
I am 100% about choice. I like it.
Because it then means you get all the transmog for all the other weapons too, which I like. So.
Well, now you're speaking my language. Oh my gosh, you just get all that transmog.
You just get all of it because it's a quest that you complete, and if you complete a quest that has multiple rewards, you get the transmog for all the rewards.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. This is the best news. I probably already have some conquest build up.
You probably do.
So that'll be fine. That'll be something I support. What about you, Jason? What have you thought of the raid so far?
Man, I gotta say, normally when a raid comes out, we'll start working on normal mode at first, just to see the fights, learn the rhythm, kind of learn what the spell effects look like, figure out some of the timings. And normally that first week or two where we're just kind of focusing on normal mode, I'm just thinking, man, I don't know if I still want to do this. Like this, I don't know if this is. I gotta reevaluate some of my life choices.
It's a lot of work.
And then normally once we start kicking into heroic, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, this feels better. This is actually really fun. I definitely had that with Eternal Palace. Like the first week or so of Eternal Palace, I'm like, I don't know about this raid. I don't know about this whole raiding business. I don't know. And then by the third week, I was like, well, actually, Eternal Palace is a really solid raid. It's a decent re-clear. The fights are pretty fun. It's you can bring people to gear up through it. You can teach them the normal fights, whatever. You can bring them to 3/4 of the fights as hard carries on heroic, like whatever. Actually, Eternal Palace I think was a really strong raid, but Ny'alotha the first weekend on normal, I was like, this raid is amazing. Like, I have some minor gripes with it, but they're so outweighed by how epic the whole thing is. All of the bosses look great. The effects look really cool. There's some really wacky mechanics that kind of play off of the theme of N'Zoth's inflicting madness on our characters, and he's like wreaking havoc on the world. The interior design of the place is just, like, it just looks incredible. It looks like a real raid. You know, it's not a player city that we've converted into some boss arenas.
Yeah.
It's more of like I almost would compare it to like Black Temple or something. You know, Black Temple just uh, it felt like the scale just felt so epic back in the day, and I think I think Nyalotha is really in that vein for me. It's just like I love the evil bad guy castle, right? Like the big epic lair, and we go fight the big bad guy. That's what I like about raiding, and I think Nyalotha nails that. And so far, I've had a great time. You know, we're sort of right now. My team is kind of moving swiftly through heroic. We've gotten 8 bosses so far, and we still have one night this week. I think we got a good shot at getting another boss or 2 before reset. And so I've started running normal off night groups, you know, teaching groups, just chill groups, come in, raid, kill some bosses, see what it's all about. And I love that. You know, we're gonna have this raid for a long time. We'll be in this
Yeah.
raid until the end of the year. So it's got you know, the fact that it feels like it has some legs on it and it has some accessibility is fantastic. I think that's what you need out of the final tier. So
And it's got a
I'm
lot of that
really enjoying it.
it's got a lot of that, like you said, there's an epic feel. Like, you know, granted, I haven't seen a lot of it, but there's less that feel of like, I don't want to shout out any one specific boss, but I guess I'm going to.
Go
Like,
for it.
here's the weird scorpion that lives under the keep. Like, there's less feel of that, and it feels more
Yeah.
like these are things that you want to go out and you want to fight, and not just, oops, there was a
Yeah,
monster
the
down this
theming,
hallway.
right? Yeah, the theming's really strong. A lot of the monsters are all kind of they have a thematic tie to N'Zoth, the old gods, the Black Empire, etc. And there's a couple different flavors of that within, you know, the interior. But you know, there's nothing. Yeah, there. You know, sometimes there's that creature, that weird animal, or something that seems kind of out of place, you know, with the theming. But Nihilith doesn't have that. Like everything is straight up old god bad guys.
Yeah, very very cool.
And then there's and Old God Bad Guys and Raden is sort of like the he's just sort
Well,
of in the middle
he's
there
fighting good
of
guy that
corrupted.
got
Yeah,
he got all old god gooped. He
it's
got gooped.
very sad how gooped he got.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, he's a
he's got
cool
a
Yeah,
big
boss. He's
arm.
one of my favorite bosses, man. He's definitely one of my favorite
He's got a
bosses.
Stukov arm.
He
I
does have a
mean,
Stukov arm. You're
you'd be
right.
disappointed if you were dealing with old gods that corrupt and mess with people, and you didn't get a nice set of flavors of people that got corrupted along the way. You got to have that. You're dealing with mind control and corruption. You got to have something.
I just wanted them to expand more on the whole Mother and Raden romantic thing that started happening, and then he got sort of pulled out of the room before we could see that develop. So I need some sort of
Oh
follow up.
man,
You
a rom
need
com.
a
Yeah,
steamy romance novel,
exactly.
Raden and Mother. Oh, it sounds dangerous. Sounds
It sounds almost
risque.
like ramen, but that's fine. No, it's
Ramen.
not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I had to focus on any sort of negative about the raid, I mean, right now trash does feel really heavy in there. Lots of very cool variety of trash. Like there's a lot of work they put into mechanics, how this stuff works, as far as how you're going to kill it, efficient ways to skip, and different bosses you can skip. They put some mini bosses in there as well that if you kill them, you get corrupted mementos. So there's some motivation to do some of the harder trash that's in there. And of course, all the BOEs that drop are really nice and pretty. And so there's a lot more of them because there's more trash you have to clear. But right now, it does feel like a bit of a slog trying to get through it all. I think once we gear up a bit more, it won't feel like quite as much of a slog. You know, once we're 3 or 4 weeks from now. But it definitely, like the issue with having a large, evil, corrupted city is you need a lot of corrupted people to fill out the city because it's a city.
Right. Yeah.
So that just means that there's a lot of trash, and that's fine. It's just not something that a lot of people tend to enjoy inside
Yeah,
raids.
I mean that's my minor, you know, my only gripe, I guess, with Nyalotha as a raid instance and somewhere we're going to be spending a lot of time for most of the next year is the trash is really uneven. I'm not a no trash guy. I see the value of trash for pacing and for introducing some mechanics, and I think to some degree that works in Nyalotha. But the problem is when you have no trash to the first boss, and then you have like very high volume trash for the next many bosses.
There's no trash between the second last and last boss either.
Yeah, it skews the whole concept of the trash pacing, and we've also had some problems figuring out what trash is actually tied to. I thought it was tied to Raden, and then so we cleared Raden's side, and then came back in on Wednesday to find a giant platform full of trash again. So
yeah,
getting the trash to go away after you've killed it is also a little bit challenging at the moment. But
yeah.
then again, I've been ripping a
be
corrupted
skips.
BOE every other week, so as long as that keeps up, I guess I'm happy.
Yeah, the skips are what are going to really make this go away, which is why I'm like, in a few weeks we're going to be geared up more. You'll have killed the appropriate bosses. Well, at least in my case, we'll have killed the appropriate bosses 4 times, which means we'll be able to skip to wherever we sort of want to skip in the 3 different areas we can go to in the dungeon, which will make a big difference for that raid. So I definitely enjoy that aspect of it. But let's touch a little bit, I guess, on, because I want to touch a little bit on the finer points of the world race, if you will, because that's sort of where people are, as mindsets at right now, because Limit just killed it yesterday.
Yeah.
And they struggled a lot with N'Zoth, just because of issues with that fight. And so there's been little tiny bug issues throughout the whole zone, as far as rating goes. And if we're going to talk about rating, I feel like we should talk about that. So, it's tricky with raid instances like this, right? Because PTR doesn't get nearly as many eyes or pulls in on these bosses as live does. So you sort of have to keep that in mind of there's much more people pulling bosses many more times, which means you're more likely to find instances of something going wrong, or something not working properly. And then you also have things like I almost wonder whether Blizzard hopes that they'll have more time to work on bosses once they launch a raid, because it'll take people time to get to those bosses. And something like the World First Race doesn't allow that, because they're there within 3 days, kind of thing. So that also, I wonder if that sort of ruins their plans. But they ended up in a situation where, one night they had to reset N'Zoth on every server everywhere, which meant that essentially the boss despawned in the middle of a pull for Limit, because they were doing something that was not intended on the fight, and that wasn't a legitimate way to actually defeat the boss. And so the boss was despawned, and it despawned for every raid team everywhere at the same time, which was impactful. And when you see something like that happen, it's unfortunate. But it is the situation that you live in with video games, where N'Zoth had 0 testing. There was no testing done on N'Zoth by the player base, should I say. There probably was a lot of internal testing. Don't want to discredit that at all. But it means that, yeah, like when we got to Mythic N'Zoth, there was going to be some things that people discovered that didn't work the way they're supposed to.
Well, and that's the tricky thing with World First, is because it's kind of a non-official event. Like, as far as community and eyes on it, and even obviously if the devs are pushing patches or at least despawning the boss and making changes because of what the raiders are doing, there is kind of an official element to that, to a degree. Like, the acknowledgement of they're doing X and we're responding to that in real time is maybe not an official, like, promotion of what they're doing, but it's a reaction to it, and it's a reaction to something that everybody has eyes on. And it's kind of, it puts it in this tricky place, because you're not dealing with some Blizzard sanctioned event. So the expectation that this needs to be fair and balanced and ready to go has always been an unrealistic one. Like, anybody who goes in and says, well, it shouldn't be buggy, they should have tested this. Well, like you said, you really can't. Like, the testing is live. Part of the competition is you're dealing with content that's in this state. This is the state that it's in. And that's sort of the unwritten rule that you kind of have to accept if you're going to be in this race, which is something you opt into. Nobody's making anybody do this. But then on the other hand, you have people that maybe get negatively impacted by it that aren't interested in it. And you probably have some people going, well, I was in the middle of just raiding with my raid team, and you friggin' ended our encounter, and I have nothing to do with this World First thing. Why does this have to impact me? So it's a tricky, weird middle ground with the race to World First, because Blizzard has to react to it, but there's also maybe an expectation that they don't. and it's one of those you're just not going to make everybody happy.
Well, and it's about who are you making happy, right? When the 0.001% of the WoW population is doing this content, you lean towards making sure things are rounded out for everybody else. Now they want obviously all their content to be playable and functioning, which is why they're making changes to N'Zoth the way they are. But it is that case of I do wonder a bit, and I don't know this, I don't have inside info on it, but whether they highly test the earlier bosses first because it gives them more time once they release the raid to really focus on testing those later bosses. Because you end up in a situation where the majority of your teams aren't going to be facing those last two bosses. Jason, have you guys even done Heroic N'Zoth? Is that your team working on that yet?
No, I mean we
Yeah.
we're probably a couple weeks out.
Yeah, so it's that case of like essentially inside Jason's raid team case, which is an active raid team that clears heroic regularly. They are 4 weeks into the patch before they actually even get to that boss and kill him. So that's 4 more weeks that Blizzard could spend working and testing and fixing things on that boss for the quote unquote average player, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's just something you have to take into account with it. Didn't mean to hijack the show on the world first thing. I just wanted to
no, it's interesting, and it's one of those things we don't talk about it very much. So it's good to have that perspective and think about it. It's a fun event. People get excited for it.
Yeah, and hundreds of thousands of people watch it. Yeah,
it's a real double-edged sword, and I think this one in particular, it just kind of highlights. I feel like the attention tends to paint WoW in a bad or at least weird light. So yeah, I have a lot of conflicting feelings about it. Like they say there's no such thing as bad publicity, but I don't think that's true when it comes to things like that. And I think clearly there was some plan for the Mythic Corruptor fight that couldn't be implemented um, and have it work properly because Limit and their corporate sponsors and likewise Method had an expectation that the boss was going to die within about 14 days. And so now in all likelihood Corruptor will never be the fight that it was designed to be. And Team 2 is
similarly like Jaina, yeah.
Yeah, and Team 2 is kind of locked into this strange arms race with this unofficial event because they need to make the bosses challenging for Method, Limit, and maybe a couple other teams, Pieces, Exorcist, whatever. There's a handful of other teams that are up in this orbit, if not at this level. And they don't have the resources to test that internally to actually like kill the bosses. So they can just kind of hope that the transitions are smooth and obviously they don't release this stuff for PTR testing at all, and the PTR testing they do in raids is very limited. They keep a lot of the stuff kind of secret for various reasons.
But and just to give an example, there is the raid testing for a lot of bosses is about an hour to an hour and a half on a boss that you have available to do it. So you go in, your team has about an hour to an hour and a half to fight a boss, and then they shut that boss down. That's the extent of raid testing that happens on
right.
PTR.
It's not like you can go walk in the entire duration of the PTR and choose the boss you'd like to fight. It's hey, these 3 bosses are being tested on Friday. Go forth and test them. And I mean, maybe that's a different. I think these things are starting to create friction with each other because should the PTR just be totally accessible and testable, and then the community just sort of de facto migrates the race to world first to PTR? I don't know. I mean, does having extensive PTR availability and testing for raid bosses create a smoother overall player experience, but a shorter and less intense race to world first because the competing teams are very well practiced and prepared when they flip the switch? And is that even a bad thing if the race to world first is a reset? And it's just this kind of display of skill at low gear level from very well practiced teams. I I don't know. I don't really see much of a downside there, but I think if they keep doing this where I mean BFA has been really weird for this. Jaina was really weird for this, and N'Zoth was really weird for this. So I don't I think I think Team 2 in some ways has kind of painted themselves into a corner when it comes to raid difficulty at the top end and sort of unofficially catering to the racers because they want to have that super high bar that only the absolute best of the best can clear. And then after a couple weeks, then they start bringing in the nerfs and the fixes to bring it in line with where, people who log normal amounts of time into the game can actually defeat them. So
Is
I
it
don't know.
Healthy
I'd like
amounts
to
of time.
see. I'd like to see a philosophical shift when it comes to this kind of thing. Honestly,
is there any merit, do you think? And it's just while we're talking, I think
Sure.
about these things, and have not thoroughly thought about these things. But it almost seems like there would be a benefit to Blizzard embracing this as an event and having it be. It's not like it goes well. Sometimes it does, but um, put it at the end of your PTR cycle, pre-patch release. Make it an in-house Blizzard thing. Make it something that they sponsor and they bring the teams in for, and that they do, and have it be your last leg of PTR, be the race to world first as an event that the community can get behind and enjoy. Have that essentially act as your last stage beta test, and then put it out into the world. Now, you are essentially in that case putting out, and people have watched now the entire raid, but that's still already kind of happened. If you want to know the fights and you want to see it, like, you can go see all that stuff. I don't necessarily understand the desire for massive amount of secrecy from the main audience. And actually embrace it and pull it in house a little bit rather than have it be this weird thing that kicks off and kind of overlaps the experience that the rest of the players are having.
Yeah, so I think that there's, I mean, the number one problem with Blizzard trying to bring it in house is that the big corporations wouldn't do it because they don't make as much money that way. But aside from that, taking that thing and putting it aside, because complexity and method would want to make money on their own in their own channels, doing their own promotion, selling their own shirts, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. Putting that aside, if they actually ran something in house, I think that Blizzard would do. I guess I would prefer it if it wasn't involving the current raid. I would almost wish that Blizzard, if they're going to do an event like that, would invite those teams in and would create a boss or several bosses that would be sort of like the anniversary event where they just spawned a whole bunch of fun bosses in an area kind of idea, or like when we did PTR beta test stuff where they just spawned a whole bunch of hoggers kind of idea, and just sort of put the players to the test in the sense of, here's something no one's seen before, no one's had the chance to test. We've thoroughly tested internally as far as this one boss, because it's only one boss sort of idea, so we know it's going to work well. And it's sort of like a Nintendo challenge, basically, right? It's the new map no one's seen before. Let's see who can get through it fastest, right? Everyone's seen the Wizard. Everyone's seen that. That kind of
Cinema
concept,
Classic.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cinema Classic, the Wizard.
That
Yep, nailed it.
that to me would be what I would think would work better for them as an esport, because you essentially get to watch these teams try and solve the puzzle, and it won't take these teams more than 2 days to solve this puzzle, sort of thing, right? And so it's an event for a short period that doesn't spoil the raid situation as much, and isn't dealing with Blizzard expecting to beta test, in their case, 12 bosses in this raid tier.
It's a cool idea, I think, but I mean, the problem is that it doesn't address anything with Race to World First, and Race to World First would still exist.
I just don't think Race to World First is something you can solve, right? Because the large corporations are now involved, which means that you're now in a situation where complexity and method are going to be, front runners for a while until another large corporation's willing to get involved and dump money into it. I know that there's a couple of other orgs that are looking at getting involved in WoW stuff, but they typically sponsor one player or two players for some sort of, PvP sort of a related thing, not as much in the Race to World First, where you're dealing with a team of 25 sort of idea. I know that, and this is just an example for you, John, that's weird about this raid tier is, as Jason used the example of high skill players defeating bosses with lower item level than, they just sort of required to do the content. That isn't the case for this raid tier because of corrupted gear. It's really sort of twisted things in a lot of really weird ways, because the value of what's on corrupted gear is so extremely high. You know, you're no longer dealing with oh, this is a 300 DPS upgrade for me. You're dealing with this is a 9,000 DPS upgrade for me.
Oh, love it. That makes me so happy. Anytime, and I know this will surprise you all none, anytime that they go to this pristine and beautiful well and just throw something hard into it, I'm like, oh,
yep.
Oh hell yeah, we did it. We
did it right now. They did it to the point where both these teams were just buying up BOE items that people were finding that had corrupted gear on them. They were running world quests to try and get particular corruptions off world quest things. They were running anything they could do to get gear. So actually, when they killed this, there were multiple members wearing 415 item level items that were doing this because they had the right corruption on them.
Yeah.
At one point during the race, in the last day, about 10 or 12 pulls before Limit killed it, one of the people went, hey, I need 5 million gold. I need 5 million gold right now. There's mastery pants that are up. I need to buy these mastery pants. And that was it. And you're like, okay, if you actually did a token conversion, that person just dropped a couple of grand. Like, that's what that was, right? Like, it's crazy. And they do that. They take out hundreds upon hundreds of millions of gold in debt from player base and from, stuff in the game in order to buy the BOEs they need to buy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and there aren't really any other guilds, orgs, whatever that have these resources. It's becoming a 2-horse race. I mean,
well, just because of this gear this time, yeah.
I guess, but not even, because I mean, there aren't any other guilds that can legitimately compete with the infrastructure that Method have.
Right now, Pieces and Alpha are both supposedly ahead of Method's progression on Nizam. So they're competing, right? They don't have the financial backing that those guilds have, but they are competing. This here in particular is just heavily benefited by having financial support. That just is one of those benefits.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I guess it's better than where we've been for the last 5 years or so, where it's been a 1-horse race. I mean, Limit has done a lot of work to make the connections and raise their level of play to be able to pull off a world first. But yeah, I don't, I think the problem with getting endemic esports orgs interested in the space is that you get a giant bump of eyeballs for 2 weeks every 6 to 9 months, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, Race to World First is not an esport. It is games done quick. It is a weird speedrunning sideshow, and it's interesting on that level, but it's it's not a competition in the truest sense of the word. And the playing field will never be level in terms of what the teams have access to. I don't really want to see Blizzard get. I want them to be less involved in it, not more involved in it. I don't want tournament realms. I don't want official support for this thing. What I would like for them to do is stop tuning the raids with an eye towards the top 5 teams that exist in the world. And if that means that you don't have this 3-day long Twitch drama of can they or can't they, and you just watch them learn the fight, execute, and knock the boss over. I think ultimately that's better for more players than it's bad for the game's PR status. And I mean, this was not a great race for for the face of the game. I mean, if you look at gaming press that is not WoW centric, it's like, oh well, the Race to World First shined a spotlight on a broken, buggy, busted ass raid, and it's like, it's not entirely untrue, but like we kind of know, like as people who are more involved in the culture, we understand that like they create this content to challenge these specific teams, and I just don't like that. I think they need to stop doing that, but I don't think they're going to.
I'm actually 100% with you on that. I people get excited. I look at my timeline and I realize how many people I'm taking on when I go, I don't like the Race to World First and I wish it would go away. I understand that I say that and I make a ton of enemies. And so I'm just gonna quietly just let it be. But generally speaking, I'm with you. Like, the news stories that come out of it are not flattering. And it's funny because no one looks at games done quick, the comparison you drew earlier, and goes, man, Legend of Zelda, what a buggy disaster of a game that is. It's a case of when people push against these boundaries, things do break. Are there some legitimate bugs that fall into place and get discovered there? Yeah. If people were progressing at a more reasonable pace and not having financial backing or doing crazy things to try and achieve this weird goal, there's a chance that maybe some of those would be squashed by the time most people got to them and got to see them. And by and large, the percentage of people that will go through Nyalotha and have a bug-free, clean experience is going to be very high. So it doesn't, you're right, it doesn't necessarily serve them to get a bunch of eyeballs on something and then have a bunch of news sites write up, geez, what a crap show that was. Like, that's not going to help them. And it doesn't help my experience when they add something super fun, which I thought I was going to hate, like corrupted gear, that makes this game a freaking blast and a half. And I'm like, my God, they've done it. And then they're like, we got to walk it back because people are having fun. And I'm just like, no, stop it.
I don't really know what we were going to talk about tonight, John, because I mean, first of all, we never do, right?
Yeah.
That's the best part of this show is that
true.
we fly without a net, and that's why I love doing this show with you guys. But I mean, dude, we're on the same team about everything. Like, why don't we?
Here.
You need to play always with me, and then we can enjoy all of this stuff that we're not supposed to together. It'll be great.
Yeah.
We can have our corrupted gear, and it'll be broken, and it'll be doing 30% of our damage passively, and we'll high five, we'll slash high five in chat,
and kill each other from the high five because our corrupted pants shot at each other.
Echoing, voiding all over each other's high five.
I'll raise the controversial idea then, since you guys are on that page. What if Blizzard released Mythic raid content in Wings like they do LFR?
Yeah.
So as opposed to releasing everything at once, they go, here's the first 3 bosses, or here's the first 4 bosses, and then 2 weeks from now you'll get the next 4 bosses, and then 2 weeks from now you get the next 4 bosses, which means it gives Blizzard 6 weeks essentially to fix stuff with the last few bosses, if there's issues with that linger.
I like it. I mean, we've seen it before. There's precedent if you go back to like Icecrown Citadel, right?
Right.
That released in Wings over weeks and weeks of time. So
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that, and it wouldn't affect my play experience. If I was on the cutting edge of like, oh, I'm at the end of the wing, I need the next wing now, like that would be a completely different universe for me to live in. So I think
that's why I say Mythic, right? Because I think Heroic and Normal, I mean, there's many less mechanics, there's many less game-breaking things you're pushing.
And they're not prestigious either. Like Mythic is where the prestige is when it comes to server first, and world first obviously is always going to be. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be an interesting idea. It would create a chance for more parity, right? You wouldn't have to. You'd have like a reasonable shot at getting higher ranks if you were a team that didn't play as much, because you might be a high skill team who just decides, all right, we're going to extend while somebody else is re-clearing because they know they need to gear up. They're clearing the previous wing. You could jump just right into the next wing. You could have situations like that, and it would give them more time to address these types of issues. If there's just straight up, I mean, we have seen some weird. I mean, you mentioned some server problems that you ran into with Vex. Or Emo Charizard, as our team has dubbed Vex.
Vex has been fixed, by the way. It literally took them about 4 days to get rid of whatever was going on server-wise, and it was done. Like that was their window of, oops, okay, let's fix this.
Right. So I mean, it could give them a bit of a window to smooth some of that stuff out, or flex on something if there's some kind of a problem. So, I mean, the other benefit would be, it would potentially provide a smoother experience, and then also it would pace out the excitement around the new raid in terms of their marketing and in terms of Twitch streams. People who are pulling in views and eyeballs and pulling in money from Twitch streams or whatever they're streaming on, they would get 3 or 4 or 5 weeks of that instead of 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So,
and you also end up in a situation where balance-wise, it's easier to do because you can expect people to have X many resets and re-clears of bosses before you actually end up at a point where you're dealing with that last boss. So you're not going, hey, what did people walk in with on day 1? Well, we have to try and kind of figure that out. you actually end up in a situation where you know exactly what they walked in on day one, and you know exactly what they're going to walk in on with their next reset and the reset after that, as far as how much gear you're predicting the team getting. Because the tricky thing with this was, I'm going to buy all the BOEs. And so they bought all the BOEs, and they're like, okay, well, you just had this massive influx of character power that they had not predicted would happen because of how strong corruption was, how much corruption these people were wearing when they were doing these encounters, and the fact that they could just buy it all, which is just not something, you know, it's just not something you can see coming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want them to do away with BOEs because that's an important way for
no, I think
guilds to
BOEs are
make
important.
money
I just mean those teams would use them in the first week.
Yeah,
so
I
use
mean,
them in the first
absolutely.
week, and then you're like, okay, we know where your character power is at for the
right.
next
You're
week.
now fully heroic geared or whatever, or beyond heroic item level before, you know, after one reset. Like that shouldn't be possible.
You're not learning that
what
on
you're
the
suggesting
day.
is a cool idea. I would like it. I think it would be massively unpopular with the loudest voices.
Sure.
And so they probably would not be too amenable to that. But I think for everybody except the top 1% of the 1%, it would make for a better experience overall.
Yeah, I generally agree. I'm looking at it. I'm seeing a lot of pluses. I'm saying do it. It sounds disruptive, and that's when you had me on board.
I'm glad I brought the topic to the roundtable. I needed some discussion to really flesh out what that was going to look like. So
it's not hard to get me on your side in arguments about WoW. It's like, okay, what will cause the biggest stir and make the most waves? I'm like, I'm on board. Let's do it.
I'll remember that going forward.
Yes, just whenever. It's just, hey, what if you know professions? Got rid of them. Let's do it. Let's pull that trigger. Yeah, just done.
So when they did the BlizzCon PowerPoint for Warlords of Draenor, you must have been just hitting the ceiling.
Oh my gosh!
Every system that exists in the game gone. All new systems.
Yep. Yeah. Honestly, like that era of the slideshow, put up some words, give it about a beat, and then the word "gone" appears, is the most like pure just dopamine hit slideshow I've ever felt. Like it's the most excited I've ever been for WoW, because just like it really is. It's just throwing that in the pool and just being like, yeah, let's make ripples. Let's see what happens.
And that was Ghostcrawler, and then like 2 months after that, he was like, "By the way, I don't work here anymore."
Yeah, that's the best. And that's how it always works, right? Like the manager's like, "I'm firing everybody. Everyone's gone. And now I'm gonna leave too. You guys just clean up the mess. I just made a mess. You guys have fun with it."
Ghostcrawler gone.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I like it. WoW has been around for a long time. In a lot of ways, it's around longer than I think a lot of people. I would say there's even people at Blizzard that didn't expect it to be around this long, let alone popular as it is right now.
When they started, they didn't know if they'd ever do an expansion. The plan wasn't to keep the game going indefinitely. It was to make Blizzard EverQuest.
Yeah.
And just see what game they wanted to make next. So
yeah,
I mean, they didn't have a 15-year game plan, and that's, it shows, there's ebbs and flows, and there's high highs and low lows, and they just gotta keep rolling with it sometimes.
And how they created the game, even on a coding level, was the evidence that they weren't expecting to have it still be around. Like when they were like dealing with the amount of dots, the limit to the amount of dots and buffs you could have on a target, because it was all based off spreadsheets, and the spreadsheets could only handle so many digits inside each column. So they couldn't actually, the dots were dropping off because they were exceeding the amount you get. Like, it was just, you're like, okay, guys, like, I get that you designed this game a while ago, but that's, one of those things that they had to go back in and fix all the coding for and fix how it worked to make it modern. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a game that was designed as a standalone game that they've turned into a game that has expansions, and that has lasted for 15 plus years.
Yeah, just think about the things we were excited about 15 years ago, like the things that we thought were cool and cutting edge 15 years ago. That's what this game was built on. Ideas years before it, as a matter of fact, because game development takes a while. So
yeah, I mean, starting like 99, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that this game is still there, and that's why I say disrupt the hell out of it. Whenever you find something that you can mess with it. And yeah, people are going to be mad, but they're going to be mad at you anyway. So you might as well do the thing you want to do.
And then you can have the victory moment of reverting the disruption.
Exactly.
We're sorry, guys. We know you didn't like that. We're going to give you what you wanted.
that just happened today, actually. So today, they went in and they changed the requirement for tier 3 essences from the new factions from Exalted to Revered. You now only need Revered Reputation to buy these new essences. So everyone was like, oh, thank God. Thank you, Blizzard. You made a good decision. You changed this requirement. I really didn't like grinding that rep. We were 4 weeks away from being able to hit Exalted. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then, of course, about 15 seconds after doing that, they go, but then why isn't the infinite augment rune down to Revered from Exalted? I mean, that's what are you doing, Blizzard? This thing should be down lower. And you're like, yeah, you can't please everybody. Like, let's just be.
It's like toddlers, man. You give them an inch and they take a mile. So you got to be careful when you negotiate with. I don't negotiate with terrorists. I don't negotiate with toddlers. And you got to be careful out there.
Look, I am always going to be all right, we've successfully or unsuccessfully gotten them to buy into the stupid thing I said on the show. I don't take credit for anything, but, sometimes you're just like, I said that, and they're doing it, and so I was in this camp of victory. I will always be the cross it off my list, move on to the next guy. I know where my place is. I'm always going to be the toddler that's like, there's always something. You can always do better. I'm always going to look at World of Warcraft and go, it's great, I love it, what fun. You could do a lot better. Until they fix grappling hook, there's always one thing.
You want to go vertical?
No, they gave us the greatest ability of all time, and then the Mythic Dungeon Invitational came out. And there were a lot of rogues because they could sneak around and they could grapple from thing to thing and skip trash, which if you want to get right down to the root of it, there's your problem. So they nerfed the grappling hook to where it has to have a path to go from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. We didn't used to need that. Those weird things where you could like jump off a ledge and there'd be like a weird overhang and they had like jumping puzzles for a while. Super easy for a rogue. Mm-hmm. You just jump off, throw your grappling hook, connect. Now you have to have a path. If you don't have a path, the grappling hook doesn't work and it just goes, meh, can't connect. And they've walked it back a little bit, but it's not as good as it was, and it will always hurt my feelings because it's the most amazing ability in the game.
As a heroic leap main, I understand your pain because they basically play by the same rules, and then that patch came in like 7.25, maybe it was. I forget exactly when, but I remember like doing Legion dungeons for the first half of Legion, and I'm just like jumping up 2 levels of stairs and running away while my party is trying to navigate the winding staircase, and it was great. And then they decided that was not fair for MDI, and that meant that my fun got nerfed. So
meanwhile, demon hunters and their floating asses are just floating around and double jumping. Friggin' demon hunters.
I mean, it's funny because this is kind of the same thing we're just kind of talking about with the Race to World First. It's like I don't care if grapple hook and heroic leap having vertical pathing unbalances super high-end competitive play.
Yeah.
I want to jump on top of stuff. I want to leap heroically. Just let me do it.
It's a grappling hook. I want to use it to get to places I'm not supposed to be. That's why people have grappling hooks. Not so I can move forward faster.
In beta, I remember one night in beta for Legion, me and a couple rogue buddies took our character copies out, and we were in Storm Shield in Draenor content, and we were just like trying to figure out all kinds of whatever wacky stuff we could do with grapple hook and heroic leap, trying to jump on top of buildings and then jump from the top of a building to the top of a different building. Just doing stuff like getting on a flying mount and flying up to the ceiling of the world and then dismounting and then heroic leaping on top of the building. I mean, you can still do that.
That's the best part.
That stuff was awesome. So it would be, we should get that back.
Yeah.
One of my favorite maneuvers is when I'm in flight form as a druid, flying up high enough that I can shapeshift out, throw a heal or something on myself, and shapeshift back. Then keep flying, and then shapeshift out, do something else, and shapeshift back.
And then swoop in and interact with an interactable that somebody's trying to fight over.
I mean, sure.
Collect it, and then you fly away and skip the next one.
I only do that to Horde, though. I only do that to the opposing faction. I don't do that to Alliance players. I think it's just rude and mean. I have that done to me, and I don't enjoy it. So yeah, I don't do that to my friendly faction. I only do it to opposing faction, and I smile when I do it to opposing faction. I'm like,
Oh.
you fighting 3 mobs here? I'm just gonna take this chest. All right, cool. Let's see ya. Bye.
Just be proud. Just be proud of what you did. It's fine. Jason Spencer, thank you so much for joining us at the round table today. Manny, we missed you, man. You were here in spirit. I want to believe that your energy channeled through us and made us better for it. But before we go, guys, where can people find you if they want to hear more of your thoughts, views, and more importantly, throwing rocks into still water?
Right. Well, we host a weekly World of Warcraft news show where we talk about what's going on right now in World of Warcraft, a little bit less about what's coming up. So we get players excited about what they could do right now in the game. And that's called The Starting Zone. And you can find that anywhere where you find podcast stuff. Also at thestartingzone.com or Starting Zone on Twitter, places like that. And yeah, we have a good amount of community going on our Discord server, and that's over at discord.com/spazbotstudios. So you can hop in there and have a chat with our community and join us to watch the show. It happens Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern, and then we throw it up on all the podcast stuff.
And we're doing LFR boss guides this week for Wing 2.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Fun.
Yeah, Wing 2.
Love talking bosses. So
yeah, last week we did Stormwind Horrific Vision Guide for people who are struggling with horrific visions. Last week's episode walks you through all the fun stuff about how to do horrific visions and what the whole mechanics are and what route you should take and things like that. And so obviously we'll do LFR stuff this week, and then next week we'll do the Orgrimmar stuff so that people can have a good shot at getting through Orgrimmar properly. Yeah. Oh, and if you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey.
All right. Jason?
And I have another show I want to plug because
I know you
my
do.
good buddy Kyle Ferguson and I have started a Warcraft 3 show all about the franchise, really, the characters, how to play an RTS, you name it. We're talking about it over on Reforged Radio. So that's been a really fun project to get off the ground this month.
I learned more about Medivh than I even knew I wanted to know about Medivh. That guy, man.
Yeah, he's something else. He's maybe a guy you don't want to know that much about, actually. But I mean, I don't, it's not his fault, right? That's the point. Is he's?
I didn't really need to know what his favorite breakfast was. I think you went a little. I mean, that was a little bit.
It's canon. It's not my fault. It's canon.
Okay, fair enough.
So yeah, check out Reforged Radio. You can find it at kyleferguson.com, 2 S's in Ferguson, and you can find it on your podcatcher of choice. If you want to see what I'm up to, you can find me on Twitter over there at Shieldwald or on twitch.tv/Shieldwald doing WoW streams.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you, guys. If you want to hear more from me, follow me on Twitter at John_Jagger. Ben should be back next week if he's not setting Disneyland on fire some more. So make sure you follow him at Ben the Mage, Ben Bumhofer. I think he's at Ben Bumhofer now. I don't know. I don't have Sarah here to yell at me when I get it wrong. Follow him. And follow the show at Azeroth RT. Check us out, AzerothRoundtable.com. That's where you can find all the episodes. If you want to email us, that's AzerothRoundtable@gmail.com. Otherwise, we will catch you all next week. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, it's weird to throw to myself, but now here's John with patrons. Yeah. Hey everybody, that Murloc noise is the sign that we're gonna say a thank you to our patrons. People who've gone to patreon.com/AzerothRT and helped support this madness. We want to give a big thank you to Aaron, Brandon O, Caleb M, Kilroy Tastic, Michael Van, your name got cut off, Sarah M, Taryn, thank you so much for being part of the Murloc Club. There you go. There's another one. It's a bonus Murloc. Just pop right out of there. Jason, Spencer, thank you again for joining us this week. An hour wasn't enough time, so I guarantee you we're going to have them back. We're going to make good on Manny at some point. We're going to get him. He's in the chat. He should have just jumped in, but he's in the chat. And, we will talk more. I want to do an entire topic about the things that used to be in this game that we really liked. I want to do it in a positive way. I want to focus on the things when they were good. Not that they're bad, that they're gone, but man, I'll give you a tease right at the end of the show. remember when if you were on the motorcycle, you didn't take fall damage? Ah, I was bitching. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll see you next week. Have a good one, everybody, and be good to each other.